The trap. Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands as the proximity alarms began screaming throughout orbital station Prometheus. The maintenance bay fell silent except for the blaring warnings that echoed off the metal walls. Through the reinforced viewport, he could see them approaching. 12 massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian against the star field. The other engineers scattered, running for the evacuation pods. Marcus stayed put, methodically packing his tools into their proper compartments. His hands moved with practiced precision, but his heart hammered against his ribs. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "Chen, what are you doing?" shouted his supervisor, Tom Bradley, from the doorway. "We need to evacuate now." Marcus looked up, his weathered face calm despite the chaos. "Someone needs to make sure the reactor stays stable during the evacuation." "Go ahead, Tom. I'll catch the next transport." Tom hesitated, then nodded and disappeared down the corridor. Marcus waited until the footsteps faded, then activated his wrist communicator. The display showed a single encrypted message. "Package is ready for delivery. Confirm receipt." He typed back. "Confirmed. Beginning final phase." The Zephyrian boarding shuttles cut through the station's hull like hot knives through butter. Marcus sat calmly at his workbench, pretending to focus on a damaged plasma conduit. When the aliens burst through the bay doors, he looked up with practiced fear in his eyes. The Zephyrians were impressive specimens, 7 feet tall, with scaled skin that shifted between deep purple and black. Their eyes glowed amber in the dim light, and their movements carried the fluid grace of apex predators. The lead warrior, General Vextar, stepped forward. His armor was more elaborate than the others, decorated with kill marks and battle honors. "Human," Vextar's voice rumbled through his translator device, the words dripping with contempt. "You will come with us." Marcus raised his hand slowly. "I'm just a mechanic. I don't know anything important." General Vextar backhanded him across the face, sending Marcus sprawling. The taste of copper filled his mouth as blood ran from his split lip. "You will speak when spoken to, vermin." They dragged him through the corridors of his own station, past the scorched walls and shattered viewports. Marcus memorized every detail, every weakness in their formation, every piece of equipment they carried. This information would be crucial later. The Zephyrian command vessel was a monument to alien superiority. Everything was oversized, built to intimidate. The walls curved in impossible angles, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. They threw Marcus into a holding cell that reeked of ozone and fear. Hours passed before they came for him again. This time, they brought him to the command center, a vast chamber dominated by holographic displays showing Earth's solar system. 3 generals stood around a tactical table, their amber eyes fixed on him with predatory interest. General Vextar gestured dismissively at Marcus. "Behold the mighty human warrior. This pathetic creature maintains their primitive machines." The second general, a female with elaborate scarification covering her neck, laughed. "Look at it, Vextar. No claws, no natural armor, no enhanced musculature. How did such weak beings ever leave their homeworld?" The third general, younger but no less arrogant, kicked Marcus in the ribs. "Their ships are crude, their weapons inefficient, yet they dare to resist the hegemony." Marcus gasped as pain flared through his chest, but he stayed on his knees. He needed them to see him as broken, defeated. "Please," he wheezed. "I just want to go home." "Home." Vextar grabbed Marcus by the throat, lifting him off the ground. "Your home will burn, little mechanic. Your species will serve the hegemony, or it will be exterminated. Which would you prefer?" Marcus clawed at the general's grip, his face turning red. We'll serve. Please don't hurt us." Vextar dropped him in disgust. "Pathetic. Record this, Fall. Let Earth Command see what becomes of those who defy us." Commander Thal, a more reserved Zephyrian with intelligent eyes, activated a recording device. Marcus noticed that Thal seemed less convinced than the others, watching the proceedings with subtle skepticism. The beating that followed was systematic and brutal. They wanted to break his spirit, to send a message to Earth about the futility of resistance. Marcus endured each blow, each humiliation, storing the pain away in a compartment of his mind. This was the price of the mission, and he would pay it gladly. When they finally stopped, Marcus lay motionless on the cold deck plating. Blood pooled beneath his battered face, and his breathing came in ragged gasps. But his eyes remained alert, watching, calculating, with the right tools and unlimited audacity. "This is impossible," General Vextar whispered. "No," Jake corrected. "This is human." The extraction was almost anticlimactic. Jake had already disabled the security systems around Marcus's cell. The force fields flickered and died, the locks opened, and Marcus Chen walked out like he was leaving work at the end of a normal shift. They made their way to the shuttle bay through maintenance passages that Jake had already secured. The few guards they encountered were unconscious before they realized they were under attack. Jake's enhanced reflexes and Marcus's intimate knowledge of the ship's layout made them unstoppable. The shuttle they stole was Zephyrian military transport, fast and well-armed. As they departed the command vessel, Jake triggered the final phase of his sabotage. Every system he had infiltrated began broadcasting human music, everything from classical symphonies to heavy metal, at maximum volume throughout the ship. Was that really necessary? Marcus asked as they accelerated toward the edge of the system. Jake's grin was answer enough. Behind them, the Zephyrian fleet struggled with the implications of what had just happened. One human had infiltrated their most secure vessel, accessed their most classified systems, and escaped with their prisoner. If a single human could do this, what could humanity accomplish when truly motivated? Commander Thal stood in the command center, listening to human music echo through the corridors of his ship. He understood now why his instincts had warned him. Humans weren't weak, they were different. And in warfare, different often meant dangerous. General Vextar was issuing orders to hunt down the escaped humans, but Thal wasn't listening. He was thinking about the intelligence reports he'd studied, the ones that showed humanity's rapid technological advancement, their adaptability, their refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. The hegemony had made a mistake. They had attacked a species that didn't just fight to win. They'd fought to survive. And survival, Thal realized, made even the weakest creatures terrifyingly dangerous when cornered. As the human shuttle disappeared into hyperspace, carrying with it detailed intelligence on Zephyrian capabilities and proof that their superior technology could be defeated, Thal made a decision that would change the course of the war. He began composing a message to Hegemony Command, recommending immediate cessation of hostilities with humanity. Some fights, he had learned, were not worth winning. The Reckoning. Jake Rodriguez moved through the Zephyrian vessel like death itself, silent and inevitable. The alien ship's maintenance passages were larger than those on human vessels, but they served the same purpose. Every spacefaring civilization needed access tunnels, power conduits, and serviceways. The Zephyrians, in their arrogance, had never considered that these same passages could become highways for their enemies. His enhanced neural implants mapped the ship's layout with each step. The vessel was massive, designed to project power and intimidate enemies. But size meant complexity, and complexity meant vulnerabilities. Jake had spent his entire career finding and exploiting such weaknesses. The first security checkpoint was almost insultingly easy to bypass. Zephyrian guards were used to dealing with brute force attacks, not surgical infiltration. Jake disabled the sensors with a device no larger than a coin, then slipped past the guards while they argued about some perceived slight in their complex military hierarchy. Command and control centers were universal concepts. Every warship needed coordination, communication, and tactical assessment. Jake found the primary server core buried deep in the ship's belly, protected by redundant security systems that were state-of-the-art by alien standards. Unfortunately for the Zephyrians, human technology had evolved along different paths. Where alien systems relied on brute force encryption and overwhelming complexity, human systems embraced elegance and adaptability. Jake's infiltration tools were quantum-based, designed to learn and adapt in real time. He connected his devices to the alien network and sat back to watch them work. The first layer of security fell within minutes. The second took longer, but human persistence was legendary throughout the galaxy for good reason. By the third hour, Jake had complete access to the ship's systems. He could have disabled life support, opened the airlocks, or triggered a reactor overload. Instead, he did something far more subtle and infinitely more dangerous. He learned. The Zephyrian military database opened like a flower before him. Fleet dispositions, tactical doctrines, technological specifications, political structures, everything Earth Command needed to understand their enemy flowed through Jake's neural implants into his enhanced memory. But more importantly, he discovered the ship's greatest weakness: pride. The Zephyrians had never encountered an enemy capable of infiltration and sabotage. Their entire military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and technological superiority. They had sensors to detect large-scale threats, weapons to destroy fleets, shields to withstand massive bombardments. But they had nothing to detect a single human with the right tools and unlimited determination. Meanwhile, in his cell, Marcus continued his performance as a broken prisoner. When the guards brought him food, he cowered appropriately. When General Vextar visited to gloat about the coming destruction of Earth, Marcus begged for mercy. But all the while, his engineer's mind was cataloging every detail of alien technology. The force field generators used a frequency modulation that could be disrupted. The guard rotation followed a predictable pattern. The cell's location was 17 decks down from the command center, accessible through maintenance shaft J7. Marcus fed all of this information to Jake through subtle hand signals during the brief moments when the ghost appeared at his cell. Commander Thal was becoming suspicious. Unlike his more arrogant colleagues, he had studied human military history. He knew that humans were capable of unexpected tactics and had a disturbing tendency to win battles they should have lost. The ease with which they had captured this mechanic bothered him. General, Thal approached Vextar in the command center. I recommend we increase security protocols. This human's capture seems too convenient. Vextar barely glanced up from the tactical displays showing Earth's defenses. You worry too much, Thal. Look at the creature, barely able to stand after a proper beating. These humans are weak, physically and mentally. Their resistance will crumble once we demonstrate our power. But, sir, their military records show. Their records show defeats, Vextar interrupted. They've never faced the full might of the hegemony. Once we destroy their orbital defenses, they'll surrender like the cowards they are. Thal wasn't convinced, but military discipline prevented him from arguing further. He increased patrols anyway, trusting his instincts over his superior's arrogance. Jake felt the increase in security like a shift in the ship's atmosphere. His enhanced senses picked up additional footsteps in the corridors, more frequent communications chatter, sensors being recalibrated. Someone was getting suspicious. Time to accelerate the timeline. He accessed the ship's communication array and sent a burst transmission toward Earth. The message was compressed, encrypted, and disguised as routine system maintenance chatter. To alien sensors, it would look like background noise. But Earth Command would receive detailed intelligence on Zephyrian capabilities and fleet dispositions. Phase 2 complete. Now for the dangerous part. Jake made his way to the ship's primary power distribution center. Every vessel needed centralized power management, and the Zephyrians were no exception. Their system was more sophisticated than human equivalents, but that sophistication made it vulnerable to the right kind of manipulation. He didn't want to destroy the ship. That would be crude and wasteful. Instead, he wanted to send a message. Jake attached his devices to the power grid and began implementing a series of cascading failures that would look like random system malfunctions to anyone not specifically looking for sabotage. First, the artificial gravity fluctuated in the officers' quarters. Nothing dangerous, just enough to spill drinks and bruise egos. Then the lighting systems began experiencing glitches in non-critical areas. Environmental controls started running temperature cycles that were uncomfortable but not life-threatening. The beauty of Jake's sabotage was its subtlety. Each incident appeared to be a separate random malfunction. The kind of thing that happened on any complex vessel. The engineering staff ran diagnostics, found nothing wrong, and filed reports that disappeared into bureaucratic limbo. But General Vextar was beginning to notice. What is wrong with this ship? He demanded as the artificial gravity in the command center fluctuated again. The chief engineer, a scared veteran named Kestel, consulted his diagnostic displays. Unknown, General. All systems show normal operation, but we're experiencing cascading malfunctions throughout the vessel. Fix it. We're trying, sir, but... The lights went out. Emergency illumination kicked in seconds later, bathing the command center in eerie red light. In that brief moment of darkness, Jake Rodriguez appeared behind the tactical console like a nightmare made flesh. "Gentlemen," he said in perfect Cypherian, his voice carrying the quiet authority of controlled violence. "We need to talk." The guards reacted with trained reflexes, raising their weapons. Jake moved like liquid mercury, his enhanced speed making him appear to teleport from position to position. The first guard's weapon was in pieces before he realized he'd been disarmed. The second guard fired, but Jake was no longer where the blast passed through empty air. General Vextar drew his ceremonial blade, a weapon that had ended dozens of duels and executions. Jake caught his wrist mid-swing, the movement so casual it seemed almost bored. "I could kill everyone on this ship," Jake said conversationally, still holding the general's wrist in an unbreakable grip. "Your shields can't stop me. Your sensors can't track me. Your weapons can't hit me. Do you know why?" Vextar struggled against Jake's hold, his scaled face twisted with rage and disbelief. "Impossible. You're just a human." "That's exactly right." Jake smiled, and it was terrifying. "I'm just a human. We're the species you think is weak and primitive. We're the ones you plan to conquer with ease." He released the general's wrist and stepped back. "How do you think that's working out for you?" Commander Thal had his sidearm trained on Jake, but his hand was steady and his expression thoughtful. "What do you want?" "Smart question." Jake nodded approvingly. "I want you to understand something fundamental about my species. We don't just fight wars. We end them. When you decided to attack humanity, you didn't declare war on another empire. You declared war on an idea." "What idea?" Thal asked, genuinely curious despite the weapon in his hand. "That intelligence, adaptability, and determination matter more than size, strength, or numbers." Jake gestured around the command center. "Your ship is magnificent. Your technology is impressive. Your military is powerful. But you made one crucial error. Which was? You assumed that because we're different, we're inferior." Jake's smile turned predatory. "Let me show you what human weakness really looks like." He activated a device on his wrist. Throughout the ship, every system Jake had infiltrated responded simultaneously. Lights strobed in specific patterns. Gravity fields pulsed in rhythm. Temperature controls created zones of alternating heat and cold. The ship's own sensors began reporting phantom contacts and impossible readings. But the most devastating effect was psychological. The Zephyrians realized that their most advanced warship had been completely compromised by a single human. Their technological superiority, their military doctrine, their entire worldview, all of it had been rendered meaningless by one man. Back on Earth, Director Sarah Kane sat in the deepest levels of Earth Command, surrounded by screens showing intelligence feeds from across human space. She was a small woman with prematurely gray hair and eyes like chips of ice. When the transmission from the Zephyrian vessel reached her, she watched Marcus's beating without flinching. "Ma'am," her aide whispered, "shouldn't we respond?" demand his release. Kane's voice was cold as space itself. Marcus knew what he was volunteering for. His sacrifice won't be meaningless. She turned to her communications officer. Activate Project Lazarus. Send the Ghost. In a facility that didn't officially exist, Jake Rodriguez received the activation signal on his neural implant. They called him Ghost for good reason. He was average height, average build, with a forgettable face that changed depending on the lighting. But his eyes held depths that spoke of things seen and done in shadow. Jake had been enhanced, augmented in ways that pushed the boundaries of human capability. His reflexes were lightning fast, his strength beyond normal human limits, and his mind had been trained to process information at superhuman speeds. But more importantly, he possessed something no alien species had ever developed: the uniquely human ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome. The briefing was short and brutal. Marcus was captured and being tortured on the Zephyrian command vessel. The aliens planned to use him as an example, to broadcast his execution across human space as a demonstration of their power. Jake's mission was simple in concept, nearly impossible in execution: infiltrate the alien vessel, extract Marcus, and if possible, gather intelligence on Zephyrian capabilities. "How do I get aboard?" Jake asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be pleasant. Kane smiled, and it wasn't a nice expression. "They've been raiding our supply convoys. You're going to be cargo." Jake nodded. He'd survived worse. Barely. The freighter Lucky Strike was deliberately chosen for its unremarkable appearance. To alien scanners, it would look like another easy target, loaded with medical supplies and food rations. They wouldn't detect the hidden compartment where Jake waited in drug-induced hibernation, his vital signs suppressed to near-death levels. When the Zephyrians boarded the freighter, they found exactly what they expected: a terrified crew and holds full of supplies their invasion fleet needed. They executed the crew without ceremony and prepared to transfer the cargo to their command vessel. Jake felt the transport shuttle's docking vibrations through the deck plating. His enhanced metabolism burned through the hibernation drugs quickly, bringing him back to full awareness. He lay still in his hidden compartment, listening to alien voices discussing the cargo manifest. The irony wasn't lost on him. The Zephyrians were so confident in their superiority that they never bothered to thoroughly scan captured supplies. They assumed humans were too primitive to pose any real threat. That assumption was about to cost them dearly. As the cargo containers were loaded into the alien vessel, Jake felt the subtle shift in gravity that told him he was now aboard the enemy ship. Phase 1 was complete. Now came the hard part. He waited 12 hours before emerging from his hiding place, using the time to let his enhanced senses map the ship's layout through sound and vibration. The Zephyrians were creatures of habit, their patrol schedules as rigid as their military doctrine. Jake slipped out of the cargo hold like a shadow, invisible in the ship's maintenance spaces. His first priority was locating Marcus. Using skills learned in a dozen different wars, Jake moved through the alien vessel like a ghost in truth, leaving no trace of his passage. The ship's internal sensors weren't designed to detect human biosignatures, another oversight that would prove costly. He found Marcus in a holding cell in the lower levels, beaten but alive. More importantly, he found him alert and aware, playing the role of broken prisoner while his eyes tracked every detail of his surroundings. When Jake appeared at the cell's force field barrier like a shadow made manifest, Marcus showed no surprise. He simply nodded once, acknowledging that the cavalry had arrived. Jake held up 5 fingers, then pointed deeper into the ship. 5 hours until extraction. Marcus nodded again, understanding. The real mission was just beginning. The Zephyrians had made their first mistake by underestimating human engineering. Their second mistake was underestimating human determination. But their biggest mistake was thinking that humans fought fair. They were about to learn otherwise.